Hi everybody and welcome to another Gaffer and Gear. Today we're going to be looking at this little unit. It's a Luxli Viola Mark II. Now I'm going to call this a first look, not a review. And the reason I'm doing that is because this light engine is actually capable of a heck of a lot more than it can currently do with its version 1 firmware. So what can it currently do? Well, the unit can be tuned from 3200 Kelvin right up to, 3000 Kelvin right up to 10,000 Kelvin with very high color accuracy. It also has a built-in RGB mode, as well as 150 gels, which are Lee brand gels. It also has some special effects. So let's get into having a look. Okay, so straight off the bat, you're probably going to want to know the price. So these currently sell for $320 US. There's no Australian distributor for them yet, but you can buy them off B&H, so they do arrive usually 4 days later. So yeah, $320 US. For that you get a ball mount, which is all steel. You of course get the light. You get a battery, which is 16.28 watt hour. Now the light is actually 15 watts, so I'd suggest buying another battery if you don't have one, getting a higher quality battery. Now depending which kit you buy, some kits do come, not for $320, but some kits do come with these soft boxes. I'd recommend getting the soft boxes. I'm a huge fan of the soft boxes. So basically they're made of rubber, so I'll show you why in a sec. So let's just get this on. Okay, so that's now mounted into the soft box. Basically, the front of this unit's got a whole stack of, as you can see, lenses. So you do get multiple shadows. So if you're using it in close, I prefer the soft box. So you get back to having one light source. Now, if you use the soft box all the time, and you don't want to be taking it on and off, the beautiful thing with it is it's collapsible, which is why it's made of rubber. So that's pretty cool. Now, in the intro, I said that the light is actually capable of vastly more than it can do. So how do I know that? Well, when this came out, it was released at NAB 2019. I ordered one straight away and said to Luxli that, I've ordered one of your new lights. Congratulations, you've come a long way in just a handful of years. I think they've been operating 3 years. And they said, let us know what you think of it when you get it. So when I got it, I played with it for a bit, and I sent them an email about this long on what I liked about the light, about this long on what I didn't like about it, and a huge chunk on what I would like the light to be able to do, because it is a very capable light engine. Now, Luxli got back to me. Basically, everything that I didn't like about the light was getting fixed in the next firmware, and everything that I wanted this thing to be able to do, it'll be able to do in their new app that they're currently working on. So let's talk about apps very, very briefly. So the units do have, currently have mobile phone apps. If you've got the iOS app, you've got an iOS phone, the current app for these is absolute rubbish. Just being really blunt, it's very toyish. The Android app's quite good. You can add your gels, pretty much do your color temperature all remotely. But the Android app can't keep track of which light's which. For example, I've got 3 of these lights running in the background currently, and the Android app can, it's found all 3, and apparently one of them's overheating. So apparently that's something that's got to be fixed in the firmware. It's reading the temperature on the light engines incorrectly. But it can find all 3, but the problem is if you start using the app, it loses track of which light's which. So very, very ordinary, but they're fixing that in the next app. All right, so I got very distracted there, started talking about software and crap. Let's get back to the LED light engine itself. One huge improvement Luxli's done this time around is every single lens has all 5 emitters under it. Okay, so previously they had warm white, then it would be your daylight emitters, then warm white, then daylight. Now it's all combined, so you get much more even distribution of your colors, particularly into the front of things like your softbox. So that's a massive improvement. So let's get into talking about the CCT mode. So the CCT mode is surprisingly good for a small light. I'll get first into operating it. So it's very straightforward to operate. So it's dimmable in 1% increments. And the other knob, so there's only two knobs, the other knob controls your Kelvin. Now, your Kelvin is adjustable in 50 Kelvin increments, okay, so right across the range. So from 3,000 to 10,000 in 50 Kelvin increments. Now, what's cool about this knob is if you press it, it jumps to your two most common presets. So if I press it, it'll jump to 3,200 Kelvin. If I press it again, it'll jump to daylight, 5,600 Kelvin. So it jumps between those two presets with a press. Now, if you give the knob a quick spin, it flicks to your other presets. So there I just flicked to 4,300 Kelvin preset. So you can individually just turn the individual notches and go 50 degree Kelvin, give it a flick and jump to presets, or press it and jump to your two most common presets. Now, the other thing that's quite surprising about this unit is it is a full color gamut engine that it's using to generate its whites. So one of the things I had on my wish list when I sent the email to Luxli was it would be nice to be able to do plus minus green with this. So on the back you can't do that because it's a small display. Now Luxli got back to me and said that that's in their new app. So when their new app's released, this light will be capable of plus minus green correction in its CCT mode. All right, so I'll explain why I'm sitting in the dark in a minute, but a couple of things I forgot to mention. Well, the thing I forgot to mention is on the dimmer knob. So if you dim it and you like where it's sitting, you can press the button and it sets the light to 0. But if you want to turn it back onto the setting you previously had, you just press the button again and it jumps up to your previous setting that you had it set to. So that's pretty cool. So that can save you a lot of setup time. Now, on the back, you've got your main power button, your on-off, and the little red button is your mode selector. So let's change our mode and go to a color circle mode. So it's not HSI mode. They don't call it HSI, they call it color circle. So in the color circle mode, you can go right around the color circle 360 degrees. And when you hit a primary or secondary color, the little circle lights up. Okay, so a lot of you are wondering, can you desaturate? And that's why I've got the lights turned off for the moment, okay? You can desaturate, but you can't do it from the actual back of the unit, okay? It's not in the menu, at least not on the version 1. Luxli say they are working on putting desaturation in on the menu with version 2. They're not sure whether they'll do it or not because they don't want it to be confusing. So here's the thing, okay? You can desaturate from your phone app, okay? So I'll just get the phone app up and I can desaturate, okay? Now it does desaturate to white light, to a white color emitter, so that's pretty cool. However, here's the problem. The reason the lights are turned off in the background is because the current phone app is really terrible. You got more than one light on, it crashes, it can't deal with which light's which. So in order to desaturate this one light, I had to turn all the other lights off so I could get accurate control over it. So that's how crap the current apps are. Again, they are promising to bring out a better app. Now, here's the next major problem. So let's desaturate it down to 50% saturation, okay? So it's 50% as red as it was before. Now, let's say we finish the shoot, don't have the phone anymore. Okay, the next person comes along the next day to use the light, they don't have the phone app or their phone's flat. You're stuck at 50% saturation now, okay? Without the phone app, you can't turn the saturation back up. And the unit currently does not have a factory reset in the menu system. So that's a huge oversight. So basically, the color mode or the color circle mode, you can't desaturate unless you've got a phone app. And if you don't have a phone app or a working phone, you can't turn the saturation back up. All right, now let's get the video onto a happier note. Let's talk about the gels mode. Now there are 149 gels programmed into the light, plus clear. So Luxli say there's 150, but they're including clear. I don't include clear as a gel, but you know, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Now gels 1 and 2 are chroma key blue and chroma key green, okay? So I sort of wonder why you'd want chroma key blue and green on a small light, but maybe it'll come in handy. Now, here's the interesting thing with this unit. So the bottom button, selects your gels, and the top button selects your intensity or your brightness. Now, with the bottom button, when you press it in, it selects your Kelvin preset. So at the moment it's set to 32. I press it, it goes to 5.6. If I press it again, it goes to 6,500. I don't know why 6,500 is a preset, but they've got it down as one. So 3200, 56 and 5.6 are your color presets. If you're impressed by the fact you've got gels, this is going to blow you away, and this is where this is amazing for such a small unit. We're going to go back to the CCT mode. So I'll press my buttons here, go back to CCT mode. I can dial in whatever color temperature I like. Let's go 4,350. Now, as soon as I leave this mode, that color temperature is memorized, okay? And that is now our base color, 4,350. That's now our base color to add our gel to. So that's super impressive for a small unit. Now, the only negative I've got with the gels mode, and this is sort of a bit of a backhanded compliment to Luxli, is if you previously bought Luxli lights, so maybe a year or so ago, bought a viola, sorry, this is a viola. If you bought a timpani or a cello a year ago, this doesn't color match in gels mode. It's slightly off, okay? And the reason that is they've improved the light engine. So, you know, it's like 98 point something TLCI now. So, unfortunately, increasing the light engine also means increasing your color rendering means you're changing your colors, okay? There's more detail in there. So on a few of the gels, it doesn't line up to your previous lights. So for me, that's a negative just because I own so many Luxlis, but what can you do? You can't have a go at a company for being progressive and improving. So that's a bit of a negative. As far as I'm concerned, it doesn't match all my other lights, but hey, what can you do? Basically, the lights have improved. I just have to live with it. Okay, so next up is the effects modes. So I've got 3 of these sitting in the background in fire effect mode. So yeah, it's sort of okay. Maybe with some sound effects it might pass as fire, but I've got to say I'm really not feeling it. So look, in terms of the effects modes, I have criticised these with Luxli, and Luxli again said, look, in the new app that's coming out, you will have amazing effects, okay, or much better effects. So the problem with the Viola 2 is the small menu system. So you can't have complex control over your effects. So pretty much the settings that are in your effects is pretty much what's there. So for example, you can't adjust the flicker rate on your fire, for example, or make it warmer or cooler. You're stuck with the preset. So you've got 10 effects. You've got a CCT chase. Now basically on the bottom knob, you turn the knob and you select your effect. Next is color chase, explosion, which is pretty ordinary, fire, which I'm running in the background, fireworks, that's pretty ordinary actually, lightning, I think it's too small a unit to do lightning. The paparazzi is actually not too bad. Now to play an effect, you'll select a knob, you press it and it starts playing the effect. So the paparazzi is not too bad. Now bearing in mind, I'm a pretty poor gaffer, I'm shooting these episodes on a mobile phone with a rolling shutter. So it's not too bad, the paparazzi. I don't think it's too bad anyway. It's definitely better than the paparazzi effect on the ALMW. That was pretty weak. Press it to stop. Pulse. So you can pulse your color. Now, so basically, you're limited to red. You don't have the ability on the back menu to go in and change the color, for example. So you're limited to what's preset. So I'll stop that again. Siren, so that's your police car lights. I don't know why they call it siren. Siren for me is the thing that makes noise, but you know, I'm just being finicky there. Basically with this, you're stuck with the same pattern. You can't change the pattern or the colors, but you know, it's $320. So maybe I'm being a bit too fussy. Stop that. And strobe. Now here again, strobe, you're stuck with red, you know, unless you go to their new app when it comes out, you're pretty much stuck with the presets. But look, the fact that it's got some effects, yeah, it might get you out of jail. You know, the fire one, again, it's not too bad. Maybe with some sound effects and a bit of smoke, that would be believable. But look, let's just see what the effects are like when the new app comes out. Now, the only sort of major criticism I've got of this unit is the battery maintenance, basically in terms of how they've programmed the firmware to deal with a flat battery. So I'm just going to show you something. So I've got the unit set to a peacock blue with a 3250 Kelvin base. It blows me away that you can do that with a small light, still blows me away. Okay, now if I turn this unit off, okay, change the battery out and turn it back on, it remembers those settings. That's what I would expect from a professional light. I would expect it to remember my settings. Now, if the battery runs completely flat, okay, and the light turns off, I put a new battery on, it remembers the settings. However, with some batteries, when you're running them, when the battery gets flat, the unit doesn't turn off. The unit goes to 0 brightness and tells you on the back here that it needs a new battery. Now, I've spoken to Luxli about this, and they say that that's what should be happening with every single battery. It should be going to 0 brightness when the battery's almost flat and telling you you need a new battery. Now, here's the problem with that. When you put the new battery on and turn it back on, it goes to its last remembered setting, which was 0 brightness. So you've basically lost your settings. So I tried having a chat with about this with Luxli, and they just sort of went, you know, well, what you do is you change the battery before it goes flat. So yeah, that makes sense if I've got one light, but if I'm running a set full of them, I can't keep track of every battery because they're in a position where I can't see the battery, I can't see the display. I don't know if it's going to go flat until it goes flat. So I think they've tried to oversmart it, and they should just let it go flat. What I tried explaining to them is if you've got a battery light and the light's not turned on anymore, everyone just assumes the battery's flat. Okay, that's sort of logical. I think they've tried to oversmart it and they've overcomplicated it. So that's the one thing I hate with these units, is when the battery goes flat, it loses its settings. And basically why that's a nightmare is, imagine for continuity, we had to match every single light to the same setting, the same exposure, the same color, it would be an absolute nightmare. So hopefully they fix that up. But that's really the only major criticism I've got of their products. Let's get into the technical review now. Okay, so let's quickly go over some of the technical stats. And look, my apologies in this episode, I don't have my regular software. My UPR Tech spectrometer has been damaged, and I've bought a Seconic for this episode. So I don't have the usual color mapping software to show you. So I feel a bit naked without it. Okay, so in terms of as a white light, between 3000 and 6000 degrees Kelvin, as I previously said in the video, this is an amazing little unit. If you just want a super accurate small light in terms of white light, forget about the RGB stuff, this is worth buying just for that. Okay, so the average Kelvin accuracy is plus or minus 21 Kelvin from what you dial in. The television lighting consistency index scores on average 98.74, and the average TM30 score, color vector testing score, is 93.5. Now the color saturation on the TM30 was around 101 to 102, around that sort of area, which is normal for LEDs. Now in terms of the accuracy of the whites overall, they were under the Planckian curve, or under pure white, by minus 0.0014 DUV increments. So basically, what does that mean in layman's terms? And this is where I wish I had the graphic with the little cross on it. In layman's terms, if you wanted to gel correct it, you'd have to wait until they invented a 1/16th plus green. Okay, so you can't gel correct it, it's that accurate. Okay, so let's get into some of our more common colors now and talk about that. So at 3200 degrees Kelvin, when you dial in 3200, you get 3137. It is ever so slightly pink, so it came in at 15 increments under the Planckian curve. So my software here was saying that you would need a 1/8 plus green. I disagree with that because it would make the unit slightly green as opposed to being slightly more pink. The TLCI came in at 98, and the TM30 score came in at a staggering 95. Now with TM30, anything above 90 is really good. Anything above 95 is pretty much unheard of at this stage from an LED light anyway. So 95 is a pretty respectable score. Here is the color spectrum. Now let's talk about 4,300 Kelvin. When you dial in 4,300 Kelvin, you get 4,300 Kelvin on the money. The TLCI score is 99% and the TM30 came in at 93. Here's the colour spectrum. Here's the TM30. Now, our next most common value that we dial in is 5,600 degrees Kelvin. When you dial in 5,600 degrees Kelvin, you get 5,640. TLCI was 99% and TM30 came in at 93. Here's the spectrum graph. And here is the TM30 graph. Okay, now above 6,000 degrees Kelvin, this is a different light. It's still very impressive, but it's not as accurate. When you dial in a Kelvin, it's accurate to plus or minus 114 Kelvin. Its TLCI score is an average of 97.75, and its TM30 drops to an average of 88.37. Next up, let's have a look at the RGB colour emitters. Red dials in absolutely perfectly at 0 degrees on the colour wheel. Green comes in perfectly at 120 degrees on the colour wheel. Blue should be 240 degrees on the colour wheel, and it comes in perfectly at 240. Now, our secondary colours don't fare so well, and this is typical of today's RGB units. So the only reason I'm mentioning this is so that in future lights that have more colour emitters, we've got a backwards reference. Okay, cyan, which is meant to be 180 degrees, came in at 216. Magenta, which is meant to be 300 degrees, came in at 271. And surprisingly, yellow, which is meant to be 60 degrees, actually came in at 51, which is not bad for a yellow on an RGB light. Okay, so that's the Luxli Viola Mark II. It's a huge improvement over the Mark I. When the software comes out, I'll do a final review on this. I think it's only fair to wait until the software comes out in terms of the phone apps, and also wait until they do a firmware update before I do a final review on the product. I think that would be a little bit unfair. I also think that I'm being very harsh on this unit. I keep forgetting it's a $230 LED light. Because it's got such a huge amount of potential in the light engine, RGB, phosphor amber, and a white emitter, I just expect way more out of it. And maybe I'm being unrealistic, but that could just be because I'm spoiled with my other RGB lights. But I think, for the price, I think it does represent pretty good value despite its shortcomings at the moment. But if the software delivers, if the phone app delivers, this is just going to be absolutely mind-blowingly amazing. I'm Andrew Locke. See you on the next episode of Gaffer and Gear.